thank you for joining us. I wondered if you'd give us a short message for the students at the RSA Academy in the West Midlands.
With pleasure. My name's Nicola Brewer and I'm the British High Commissioner in South Africa, and I've been here for just over a year. I'm absolutely delighted to join the Academy in the West Midlands this afternoon. I'm delighted to hear that you've set aside 8th of October to focus on South Africa and to learn about the school that you're going to be partnering with just north of Durban. I'm also delighted that you are joining a group of schools in the West Midlands who have existing connections with schools in South Africa. There are 21 so far, so you are the 22nd school. I thought I'd say a little bit about the kind of questions I get asked most often as High Commissioner here in South Africa. The first one is, what's the difference between a High Commissioner and an ambassador? And that one is simple. You have High Commissioners in Commonwealth countries and ambassadors in countries which are not members of the Commonwealth. The second question is a bit tougher. It's, what do High Commissioners do all day? And there are a number of ways of answering that. Essentially, Britain has embassies and High Commissions overseas to safeguard Britain's prosperity, safeguard Britain's security, to help build Britain's prosperity, and to support British nationals overseas. So all three of those things I do. We have 9 government departments and agencies based out here in South Africa. So a High Commissioner is also a bit like a conductor of an orchestra, bringing all of those together. And then the other way of describing it is to say you're kind of like an interpreter. You interpret Britain to South Africa and South Africa to Britain. And of course, if you're a good interpreter, you add value to those messages in both directions. The third question is the one I like best. The third question I get asked most often is, do you like living in South Africa and what's it like? And the answer to that is, I enjoy it hugely. It is the fascinating place to be and a fascinating time to be in South Africa. But it's quite difficult to answer the question, what is South Africa like, really briefly. So I'm going to have a go, and in order to keep it quite short, I have written down 10 things about South Africa that make it such a fascinating and interesting place. So the first one is probably the most famous man in the world today, is a man called Nelson Mandela, former president of South Africa, who led the struggle against apartheid, a brutal, systematic separation of the races here in South Africa. So Nelson Mandela is probably the first most important thing about South Africa. Secondly, it's a very young democracy. It's only 16 years old, and it's got probably the most progressive constitution in the world. Thirdly, it's a very big country. It's about 5 times bigger than the UK, and it has a total population a bit smaller than Britain's. It's also extraordinarily beautiful, and it is very rich both in minerals. It's got lots of gold, platinum, coal, and it's also very rich in animal life and plant life. The fourth thing I'd say is it's got 11 official languages. I don't know how many languages are spoken in your school, but South Africa has 11 official languages and English is one of them. The fifth thing I'd say is, and probably all of you know this, is that South Africa hosted the World Cup, the FIFA World Cup, a couple of months ago. It laid on a fantastic football tournament, and something like 20,000 England fans came out here to South Africa to watch it. And one of the most important legacies from that World Cup is something that we here in the British High Commission work very closely with South Africa on, and which I think will be of interest to your academy and the school you link up with in South Africa. It's called the One Goal Campaign, and it's a campaign to raise awareness of the need to get 75 million more children around the world into basic education. Another really important reason why you should be interested in South Africa is that it's a very important international player. It's a member of the Commonwealth, it's a member of the UN, it's bidding to come back on the UN Security Council next year, it's a member of the G20, that organisation that the premier economic organisation these days. And if you're interested in green issues, in environmental issues, next year South Africa is going to be hosting the big annual Environment Summit to focus on climate change. Where is it? It's right at the tip of the continent of Africa. It's something like 11 hours flying distance from the UK. It's roughly in the same time zone, an hour or two different. When it's winter or autumn at the moment in the UK, it's spring/summer here in the southern hemisphere in South Africa. So it's something like 30 degrees as I'm sitting here talking to you now. 250,000 of British people live in South Africa permanently, and something like 500,000 British people visit South Africa every year. So there's a lot of two-way flow between British people and South African people. It's a middle-income country. If you look at the average annual salary that people in South Africa earn, in US dollars terms, it's just under $6,000. But it's a very unequal society, so about a quarter of all South Africans live on about £1 a day, or just under £1 a day. So even though the average annual salary sounds relatively high, it's a middle-income country, about a quarter of all South Africans are very poor. And so the last thing I'll say about important things to know about South Africa is the current government, under President Jacob Zuma, has 5 priorities, 5 key challenges, and I think they give you a flavour of how South Africa is developing. The first big challenge is jobs. Unemployment is a very big problem here. Amongst young people, unemployment is over 50%. So think about that in terms of youth unemployment in the UK. The second big challenge, I've already mentioned, it's education. President Zuma says that education is his passion. So improving education and educational outcomes for everybody, all children in South Africa. The third big challenge is health. At the moment, South Africa doesn't have the equivalent of our national health system. It's about to introduce one. The fourth big challenge is crime. There is a lot of violent crime in South Africa, and the South African government is committed to try and bring that down. And the fifth big challenge is rural development, so development for people who live in the countryside. That would be my top 10 points about South Africa. It's a really important partner for the UK on trade, on development, on defence matters, tourism, sport, across the whole field, almost anything you can think of. Britain has links with South Africa. Our security and our prosperity depend on working closely with South Africa. And as global power shifts from the north to the south and from the west to the east, it's even more important for Britain to have close relationships with countries like South Africa in the south. And what I hope you will get from learning about South Africa and from your new relationship with this school just north of Durban is that you'll come to learn how different the lives of ordinary South Africans are from the lives of people living in Britain today, but also how many similarities there are. So you'll probably first be struck by the differences, and then I think you will come to see the similarities. And I hope that when you visit Nodumiso High School next year, you have, and I'm sure you will have, a really interesting and enriching experience. Thank you.
Commissioner, thank you very much.